Three, two, one. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creators Lounge podcast. I am your host, Jaye, and today's episode is going to be super interesting. I can tell already. Me and the guest have had a few conversations back and forth on Insta. We actually did a live stream just last night, and every time we link up, we always get a little bit too deep, as they might say. So I'm excited to see what unfolds today. My man, give us a quick introduction for yourself. What is your name? Where are you from? And what do you do?
Hello to everybody watching. I'm Dan. People know me as Paper Skies. I'm a melodic dubstep producer, or color-based producer as this new term's coming along. I've been for about 6 years now, and thanks so much for having me on. I'm super excited for this.
Yes, the feeling is mutual. All right, so I like to give audiences a little bit of context for anyone who is not familiar with you. Although it's saying that to you is a little bit strange because you have definitely made a name for yourself, man. Like, you've put so much work in, so much value into what you create and share with the world. So I think a lot of people are gonna know who you are. For the small percentage of people who don't, your debut, if I remember correctly, was in 2016. So I'd love to know, what was it that led up to that moment? What led up to you putting out your first piece of music on the internet?
Wow. So starting off production, I was a huge EDM fan when growing up. The first time I ever heard EDM music was I was with my cousin, and he was trying to get into like working out at his house, but we were like in elementary school, and it was a really weird scenario. He's like, if you want to get jacked, if you want to get fit, listen to this. And he played Banger. Since that moment, I mean, at first it actually threw me off for a loop. I was kind of like, what is this stuff? But I started listening to it more and more because I was like, oh, must be what the cool people are listening to. And the next thing I knew, I was a super fan, and I was drawing all of my favorite artist logos on pieces of paper, then pinning them next to my bed, so when I fell asleep, I could wake up to, I guess, or something. And then and I wanted to always get into production, but the reason I didn't do it any earlier than I did was I thought that you needed this huge, expensive setup to have like your own recording booth. My expectation for how much it cost, the entry level of production, was so high. And then I sat in a virtual Riot stream one day and kept spamming like an annoying kid, hey, how much does it cost to start producing? How much does it cost to start producing? And it wasn't until he and someone else in the chat made a quick comment of like, hey, can someone come handle this? And someone got back to me and said, it's free. All you need to do is download the demo of any software and you can get started. And I think it was maybe the next day or 2 days later that I downloaded FL Studio, and I produced my first track that day, made my SoundCloud that day, uploaded it to SoundCloud that day, and still have that song up as a private track that I'll probably unprivate one. But it's cool. It's like my entry marker.
That is so epic! That is so epic! Oh my gosh! That's amazing. And I love the fact that you were kind of shocked by Bangarang, because like, compared to nowadays standards, that's a pretty tame song for the kind of like, sound design and what goes down in dubstep music nowadays. But yeah.
It holds up.
It holds up though. You know? I still go back and listen to Bangarang. It's still a banger. Yeah. Pun intended. But that's incredible. So exercise, dubstep, virtual riots, streams. This is super interesting, and it's also I don't know. I always think it's interesting, or how do I say that? Influences play such an important part of our lives, right? And so the whole reason that both you and I are into music or any of the kind of content that we consume and create is because of influences. You know, someone told us something, we saw something somewhere, we followed it up and just kept doing it. So it's always cool to hear different people's influences that led them to where they are right now. And then even more so, I think, on the podcast, because the people who I get to have on the podcast are now influencing a new generation of people with their music and their content and everything that they do. So it's awesome to see how, life continues in that whole circle of like inspiration and creativity and everything. Dude, whenever you look... Yeah, go ahead, jump in.
So, like, with that comment you made right there, like, I'm finally at first time, like, this year getting messages here and there of people like, oh, like, your song from 3-4 years ago is what maybe inspired my production journey and stuff. And I'm like, I have music that people consider nostalgic because it's 4 or 5 years old. Like, what is happening here? it's so, and then I think of myself, I've only been producing for 6 years. And for some of my favorite artists, I can say the same thing for them. Like, even Virtual Riot at the time, he was doing shows, I believe, at that time, but he wasn't like touring or doing anything extremely massive in the EDM community. It wasn't really centered towards the gaming audience. And seeing that progression, now being able to say that myself, weird that I guess slowly coming circle. And I mean, hopefully one day I get to that point of success.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. No, it is weird. Time moves so quickly. I know it's stereotypical, but really moves quickly, especially whenever you're,
That's, yeah.
especially when you're putting in so much work. Whenever you do so much, it can be easy to lose perspective of everything you have done and like what's the impact it's having. Another just random kind of uh, I forgot the word for that, but it's just like a random side note. I've had a friend who made music a lot, kind of stepped away from the scene for 2 years, and now they just came back with a new single after 2 years, and it's been it's been doing well it's been getting some traction in his community because people have been like they didn't think he was going to come back, but now he's came back with a new song, and so it's getting some plays and a lot of comments and a lot of love. And he messaged me, he's like Ben, he's like, I can't believe that I'm getting so much love after 2 years of not being active on social media. And obviously I'm proud for him. I'm super excited that it's going so well for him. It's great to have him back in the community. But also I think it goes to show that you put in a lot of work and you don't know like what it's leading to. You don't know who's hearing it, who's consuming it, who it's inspiring. And all you do is just keep creating, and you do it because you love doing it, and it ends up affecting people who you don't even know. It ends up affecting people in ways we can't even predict. But it's not until, like you said, Dan, that you've been doing it for 6 or 7 years that then you get a chance to look back, and people like saying like, hey, this song from 3 years ago, this song from 2 years ago, this song from 5 years ago, it's like it still made an impact on me. It's cool. It's super cool. In that same vein of kind of like retrospect, like when you look back at those early days of yourself getting into Bangarang, watching Virtual Riot streams, like being super inexperienced and like the annoying kid in the chat box, like how do you think about that time, Dan, especially compared to now where you have a lot more stability, a lot more progression?
I can definitely say that I was a lot more inspired and a lot more, I think, creative back then than I was. And not to say that I'm currently not inspired to be producing or anything, but back then it was so new and it was so fresh that I was spending like at least like 4 to 6 hours a day, like every day producing. Whereas now it's kind of like I'll sit down in the DAW maybe once a week. It's been actually getting a lot better the last few weeks. I think I've been sitting down 2 or 3 times a week to work on music. But a lot less time now I've been dedicating to producing because my ideas kind of come in like quick shots and I just need to sit down and really get them out and work through quickly. But back then it was just experimentation because I didn't know what I was doing. And that was the fun part, like learning things for the first time and trying to understand all these tools that I had at my disposal. But even in terms of like the way I was uploading music back then, my dad, at the time I had first uploaded my first track, he cut off the Wi-Fi in the whole house because he wanted us to get out and get more exercise and stop sitting on the GameCube and playing Smash Bros. Melee. So when I produced that first song on that first day, and the same thing in the Virtual Riot live stream, I would actually bike to this internet cafe down the street all the time to be able to watch the streams because I knew he was doing one where he's producing Lunar. And then I biked there to upload my track and everything. And then I biked home that day and I didn't get to even check the stats or anything on it that day. And 2 days later, I believe, I remember going back to that coffee shop, opening up my laptop, and seeing that my song had 100 plays in like 2 days because SoundCloud algorithm back then, even though I had like no followers, was nuts. And I was like, oh my God, could you imagine 100 people in a room? I'm going to be famous. Like, it was such a crazy, weird experience.
Oh, I love it.
And then, yeah, I look back today and I'm like, oh man, come on, I gotta get 10K in a week. Like, what am I doing?
I'm not doing good enough.
Yeah, not to say I'm not humbled by it, of course. Like, It's still insane to me to even think that I can achieve numbers like that. But it also tells me that if I was able to reach that point in the few years that I did, it's only exponential, right? I'd have to just keep going and pushing these for higher numbers. I don't know, could grow myself more as an artist. Crazy journey.
That's insane, dude. That's funny. You mentioned that story about your dad turning off the Wi-Fi. Yeah, I remember back in the day. My family was a little bit similar. We had like one day a week. It was on Wednesday, and it was like no internet Wednesday. And so on Wednesday, like we wouldn't watch TV. We wouldn't use our computers. Most of us didn't have handphones at that time. It was like mid 2000s, and so we'd read books together, we played card games, and
Nice.
yeah, very different time compared to now. I can't imagine living without internet for even like a few minutes. There's so much to be doing on the internet. The stage name Paper Skies, that's a super unique name, a little bit mysterious, poetic as well. I'm curious about like what does the name Paper Skies mean to you, and how did you decide on that stage name?
It's grown a lot of meaning, but I'm not gonna act too philosophical and say that it had a lot of meaning when it was about. Originally, when I had uploaded that first song, my SoundCloud username was DSI7898, and that's kind of become a small meme in my Discord community where everyone knows me as, like, whatever the word is, 7898 at the end, because that was always the tag, I guess. And I've even changed it to my Discord, so that's the hashtag at the end of my name and everything.
Nice.
Just try to keep it around.
That's
but
awesome.
that was my name. It started from my old Club Penguin username because I wanted to do Daniel Sanchez is cool, but then the name was taken, so I did 7898 because they were next to each other on the keyboard. And yeah, that was the original name. And my friends, when I started uploading like 3 or 4 tracks, telling me like, "Hey, you have a really stupid name. You should change it." I was like, "Oh, you're probably right." So I started looking for inspiration. I was at my friend Thomas's house. I remember this day super vividly. I'm at his house and we're skimming through all these name ideas and name generators and going at it for like 2-3 hours or something. I mean, bless him for trying to help me out. But eventually we came to the conclusion that, okay, we just need to do something that just pulls off the tongue, like quick, easy. And my favorite song, or one of my favorite songs from Virtual Riot at the time, who inspired me to obviously start producing, was a track called Paper Planes. So that name stuck with me, and my friend was like, "Don't name yourself off someone's track." So we kept looking for alternatives and stuff. And the word melodic, every time we would deep dive into that word, always somehow referred to like flight and the sky and reaching for something higher. And then in my brain, I was like, "Oh, well, paper fly in the sky and do the whole floating thing, so I might as well just stick with the name." Stuck with Paper Planes for quite a while, and then eventually switched to Paper Skies when I got a email from Nest HQ, and it was someone from Nest HQ. I was about 1.5 years into production, and they'd said, "Hey, Paper Planes, we just wanted to let you know that we've signed a new duo, and out of respect, we thought we would give you this email. There may be mapping issues you in the future when it comes to Spotify and things, because this is official artists and had already like got copyright on the name or something like that." And they basically said like, "Yeah, if you keep releasing under Paper Planes, there could be legal implications in the future." But I was sitting in an Italian restaurant looking at this from my iPod with connected Wi-Fi, and as a 13, 14-year-old kid, I don't exactly remember how old I was, I thought Skrillex was me. So I went straight to my parents and I started like bawling, and I was like, "Skrillex wants to sue me. I'm never gonna get anywhere in my career. I'm only 1 year into this and I gotta deal with this. Oh my gosh, like what am I getting into?" I was freaking out about it. I was such a stupid, overwhelmed kid at the time.
Just the fact that you got an email from Nest HQ though, like that would like, I would like put I would be like, "I got a Nest HQ email." Yeah.
It was pretty nice of them looking back to give me that.
That's kind of like super kind to reach out to you, who at that point was still very much underground, and to say that to you. Yeah.
So I was like, "Hey, thanks." I mean, I was getting close to, I think, 1,000 followers at the time.
Sure.
And the new duo, still to this day, I don't think has exceeded 1,000 followers. So, I mean,
This guy, yo, you suck.
They probably just went to the People's tab on SoundCloud and then saw me and were like, "Yeah, you know, it will be nice and let this kid know."
Yeah.
Right? And my email and my contact and everything. But yeah, they reached out to me and I flipped out. So I changed my name to Paper Skies because it was the name of my Discord server. And I made the Discord server name that because I thought, where do paper planes fly? It's the Paper Skies.
Boom.
Next thing I knew, it ended up rolling off the tongue a lot smoother, I think. And I stuck with it. So happy with it.
Oh my gosh, I love that journey there of like discovering the name. It wasn't even just like one choice, it kind of came together over the years. So that's super inspiring. Yeah, life is a process, you know. I think that's one of the things I've learned the most from like doing content on the internet, trying to build a brand on the internet, is that we always want to be so sure when we start something. You know, it's like there's that want for structure and stability. But the fact of the matter, at least in my experience, and I'm sure other people have had the same kind of situation, oftentimes you can't figure it out at first. You've usually got to start with something and then develop it more over time. And so stuff can get more developed as you get more clarity, or you make certain choices, or in your case, Nest HQ contacts you, you know. But like, I think a lot of one of the things that can trip people up is like not having that clarity at first. And I would just say it's okay to not have clarity at first. Like, you know, you can build clarity, choose something, go with it, and develop it more as you go forward. It's not the end of the world if you have to change your name, or if you have to, you know, make small changes to your brand or whatever. Even the biggest artists in the game, some of the biggest artists in the game have done that before. I know
There's even a reference, Chime, the owner of Rushdown. I've very lucky helped out by him, director of the school. But I was following his music years and years before I started producing under the alias December. And it was December with a 3 in the middle.
Yeah.
And he changed his name to Chime because like it's too hard to tell people at shows what my name is. I can't go up to someone and be like, hey, my name is December, but like the third E is like a 3, not actually that. So he changed the Chime, but a good example of switching your name, I guess, even at a good point, because he was getting hundreds of thousands of streams of stuff, and he still made the decision to completely flop that name. And it actually took me, I'd say, about a month to even realize that he heard. But he didn't lose me as a fan. I'm sure he didn't lose a ton of people as a fan. They still know him for his new music.
Absolutely.
So it's never too late to make the decisions, I guess.
I think another one, that's a great example right there with Chime, and then another one would be, I just remembered Fox Stevenson, of course, as well, because Fox Stevenson was doing Stan SB for a good 5, 6, 7 years before he changed the Fox Stevenson moniker. And he's done nothing but skyrocket to more and more success over his career, so it's life is a process. You got to keep developing, keep growing and everything. Dude, I want to talk about the music, into the music. So obviously you've given us some good background on how you got into music production, you know, how you came to the name and everything. For anyone who's not familiar with your kind of music, your kind of styles and sounds, like how could you summarize and explain the type of music that you generally create?
The music that I create right now, that's all released and everything, I think there's kind of 2 eras of the stuff that I do, maybe even 3. There's one side of my music which is very esque, very towards like a bit of a younger audience, and that was the stuff that I really grew up making, and I still continue to make here and there because I know obviously I have an audience, enjoy it, and it's pretty fun to take a dabble into like a more fun, creative, like world experience sort of. The music feels a lot more lighthearted, but sometimes a lot more creative in terms of the writing process. And then mainly I'd say, so most people know me for, it's my like heavier, wet, glassy, crystally sort of melodic dubstep style that falls into the new color-based genre that's been coming up. But essentially, if you were to take like heavy future-based like melodic synths and then put them into a dubstep environment, I think that would sum it up pretty well. And then the third side being every once in a while when I dabble into some of the heavier dubstep, whether that be hopefully one day when I'm playing shows, there's some heavier tracks that I could throw at my set that are still mine, have people go hard to them, transition set.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think we'll get into more of that like towards the end of the episode because it's kind of big on your radar, so we won't go too deep in on it just now. But I am curious about one thing. Talking about that contrast there, especially, well, obviously, color-based is the way to kind of group it all together. But like you said, that balance between, that crystallized kind of glassy sound versus like the heavy growls and drops and such. Like, I want to ask you about this, Dan, because I kind of have like a similar kind of approach to different kind of styles. One thing for me personally is a balance between like cute things and dark things. There's a word for it actually in Japanese. You've probably heard of it before, yami kawaii, and it's kind of like dark cuteness or whatever, right? And I've always been like enthralled with that kind of concept of something that's like cute but also scary, or like good but also like bad, or dark but light, and that balance, or that kind of what's the word for it? Dichotomy? I don't even know the word for that, but like that contrast between it, right? I'm curious for you as well. I want to ask you in this kind of like very, very specific situation, like what was it that made you so attracted to that contrast between like the glassy kind of melodic sound and then the heavier dubstep, that you wanted to combine them together? What was it about those that you enjoyed so much you wanted to combine them?
I want to be more defined by a sound and not as much by a genre. I think once you limit yourself to a genre, you kind of put yourself in a little bit of a box, and you need to make sure that your fans can be comfortable with the fact that, hey, I produce other music, other than what your favorite track might. To make sure that, you have the contrast, I think is really important. It doesn't limit you. And for me personally, it was the idea that I love making melodic music that has like thought out chord progression, and thought out idea, and the melodies are there and it can be catchy and memorable, but I love having a drop that you throw your neck out to. And I don't think I've gotten to that exact point of making heavy, tear yourself out track. But I want to get there one day. I think it'd be really fun to experiment, but a lot of my love for music, and always has been start, this comes in catchy melody, melodic stuff.
Got it. So it's just like kind of like an organic kind of move for you then, between your interests into what you were creating. Yeah. By the way, I appreciate what you said before about like not boxing yourself in. That's always been like a very huge drive for me is to not box myself in. And in some ways, it's kind of been a negative thing because trying to defy the system, you kind of give yourself no rules to play with. And now I've kind of seen like how that can be an issue as well. And yeah, on a side note, for anyone watching, you should always check out her music, Akuma. Akuma has a really cool way to talk about that because she's also someone who is very capable of doing whatever she wants to do with her sound. But she also had mentioned that it can become an issue because when you have when there's no rules, when there's no limitations, there's nothing to break anymore. And so that kind of made her creatively shut down because she wasn't sure, like she wanted to break the rules, but she didn't know like there was no rules to break anymore. And so she developed the concept of building a box and breaking out of that box is how she explains it. And so what she'll do to that effect in a very specific situation is like she'll start with sine waves and then use different filters and things to kind of tweak the sound out, make it sound unique. But basically going back to basics and then breaking the basics to make something new. And she said it's really helped her to grow and develop her sound is by giving herself a box and breaking out of it. But yeah, I mean, back to your point though, Dan, like, you know, it's definitely like wanting to be limitless is such an ambition, I think, for a lot of creators. So yeah, whenever it comes down to music production, you obviously have to find a way to do that for yourself. Dan, I think that you've done really well at making your own kind of personalized sound and style that's I would say highly recognizable. I think a lot of people can recognize your sound, definitely in your community, obviously, but even for someone who's just jumping into music fresh, like it's, I think, I feel like, from my experience of listening to it, like it is quite iconic. It's quite recognizable.
Thank you.
What do you think goes into making and shaping your own sound, making and shaping your own style? Because obviously I think that many producers have the ambition to do that, right? They want to make their own kind of style and sound and be recognized and be iconic. So from your perspective, like what's worked for you? What have you done that's helped you shape your own style and shape your own sound?
It's evolved over time, and the main thing is to just let yourself be creative. And again, don't box yourself into something. But at the same time, if you want to set boundaries, like you were saying, set them, I'd say, based on a track-by-track basis. When I first started producing, the melodic music that I was listening to was a lot of saw stacks. And that was my biggest thing, is I'd probably made my goal for the first 4 years of production to just learn as much as I could about saw stacks and get them as clean as possible. I'm at a point now where, I mean, I can do various different types of chords, whether they're going to be more mono or they're going to be super wide and stereo and big 7-linesy or whatever. But that was my biggest thing starting off, is I wanted to know how to do saw stacks. And then moving into the style that I have now, which is a lot less focused on that, more about texture and like, I don't know, lush ambience and things like that. I spend a lot more time on. Your skills and what you want to pay attention to are going to move over time. It has a lot to do with the music that you're listening to, the artists that you're surrounded by, and then obviously your goals for the future in terms of what labels you want to aim for and what styles you want to try and replicate for yourself. But for me, I knew that I always wanted to do something that was a bit more lighthearted, that still had elements of dubstep, but wasn't exactly the heaviest thing in the world. Something that I can still, you know, show to a lot of my friends and have them be like, oh, this is a really interesting tune, as opposed to just like, you know, I could only listen to this if I was in more of like a rave setting or more of like a show setting or something like that. Matching the balance between, you know, you can listen to this at home while you're relaxing or hanging out, and you can also go crazy to it, hopefully at a show one day.
Yep. Yeah, that's that's an interesting point. It's true that I don't know. I think it's a cool role that you get to play there, because you get to introduce people to a music style that they might not have listened to otherwise, or they might not be comfortable with, you know. And it's something that I try to do as well, because, you know, anytime you're introducing something new to audiences or just individuals, like there's always that fear factor of like unfamiliarity. So being able to blend it or deliver it in a more consumable way opens doors for a lot of people and opens perspectives for a lot of people. You know, there's a lot of stuff that people would just say straight up, say, no, I don't enjoy that. No, I'm not about that. But if you package it and deliver it in a certain way, they're more open to it. They're more like, they can get more comfortable with it. And obviously it's great for you because it's all organic. It's not something that you're planning out. Like, it's something that you want to do, and it just kind of works out that way, that people are able to, you know, sense your authenticity. And I assume it probably works out that they end up getting into more heavy stuff after hearing your stuff, just because you kind of open the gates for them. So it's a super cool role that you get to play.
Speaking on that, yeah, there are the one interesting thing, I guess, about the way that I targeted a younger audience when I started off is that they've almost grown with me.
Yes.
So in the same way as when I started producing, I was only listening to like Bangarang and that like really like bro step, almost four on the floor type stuff. I've really grown into listening to a lot like of more diverse EDM genres, stuff that isn't so cookie cutter, a lot of experimental tracks. I listen to a lot of guys like Mr. Bill and Cohen Sound, obviously. And genres that I probably wouldn't have liked a couple of years ago, just because my, I guess, brain hadn't adapted to be able to like understand and appreciate that sort of music. Not that it's like of a higher degree or anything, but just wasn't my cup of tea at the time. And I slowly grew to love that type of stuff. It's what I listen to all the time now. Yep. And the same thing with my fans, where when I was releasing that old, more gaming style music, they really enjoyed it, and I started shifting. I would see some comments here and there like, oh, like it seems like you're pushing away from this style, or you know, maybe go back to doing this stuff that you were doing. Right. But those same fans now are the ones that are, you know, reposting my new releases and talking about how much they appreciate them. And it's cool to see that growth, not only in my music but my community too, and how they've adapted to the new stuff that I've been putting out.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's super cool. No, it is interesting. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't done the deep dive to understand like all the psychology behind it, but I do know from personal experience there's certain songs or media or things that at one point, like I'm definitely I don't enjoy it. You know, I don't consume it. I'm not about it. But then fast forward 3, 5, 7 years later, and I'm like, man, that's the shit. I love that. Like, how was I missing out on it all these years? You know, like, yeah. One song in particular is a song by Passion Pit, the artist named Passion Pit, and there was a song of his. I think it's called 10 Feet Tall. It's called 10 Feet Tall. And when I first heard it, like I kind of like skipped right over it because there's a lot of distortion on the track, like Bit Crusher kind of effect. And then I listened to it again last year, like 7, 8 years after its initial release, and I was like, oh, this is a banger. I love this. It's like all like really gritty and distortionized, and I'm like, this is so cool. Why did I skip this track before? And so it's definitely a part of the human experience, saying no to something at one point and years later coming back with a different, fresh perspective. It makes life interesting. We're always growing. We're always changing and learning more if we're open to it. What is Go ahead.
People are gonna get mad at this comment, but to literally touch on that point of growing into music.
Please do.
I remember when I was making my name, Paper Planes, with my friend Thomas that one day. Yeah. He was playing the whole Porter Robinson Worlds album, which at the time was a lot more new, and it just came out recently. And I heard it, and I was like, he was like, oh man, yeah, there's this new, this is gonna piss people off, the fact that he said this. He goes, there's this new dubstep album that came out that I heard, and it's so good, man. You gotta hear it. And then while we were picking the names, I was like, yeah, sure. And I heard it, and I was like, nah, man, like, where's the bass, bro? There's not a lot of growls and stuff. And I liked it. I did like it, but I wasn't like blown away or impressed and everything. And then I think it was like 2.5 years ago that I re-listened to All of Worlds and gave it like a full listen from start to finish, no breaks, and fell in love with it. And I absolutely love the album. But it's weird to think that like back then I was like, nah, man, this isn't for me, you know? I'm for my Skrillex yoys and wows and stuff.
No, dude, that is so funny that you mentioned that. I don't know, like, to take it a deeper level, like, I think it's humanity in general, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff that we don't understand. And we actually, it's funny, because you and me just talked about this on the live stream yesterday. Like, there's so much education that we develop over time. There's so much understanding that we develop over time. And so, I don't know, being able to approach things with non-judgment, being able to approach things with understanding and acceptance, you know, it just leads to so much more beneficial outcomes for people, you know, whether it's in terms of music or artistic expression. Like, you know, look at you, like, just because you said no to Porter like years ago, like now you come back and can appreciate it. Like, that's just the human experience, you know, like we grow and change over time, and there needs to be less judgment for ourselves over who we were, because we're always changing, we're always developing and growing and everything. And I don't know, I think that kind of situation applies to so many different situations. You know, we can't beat ourselves up for who we were, because we're not the same person anymore. We continue to grow, develop, and understanding is so important. What kind of technical aspects are you working on improving in your sound right now, Dan? Obviously, you know, you've been in the game for you've been doing music for about 6, pushing 7 years, I think. And I'm curious, like, what?
5 pushing 6.
5 pushing 6. Okay, very good. So what kind of elements of your music technically are you working on at this point right now?
The biggest thing for me is creating a sense of depth in my music. Like I said, in the last, I'd say 2 years, especially, I've been really focusing on texture and detail and like the little micro edits and things in my music. I think a lot of my newer tracks are going to show that off. Even the new track Fold that I released, in the intro bit, all of the different pads and atmospheres and textures that are panned in different elements, and just little stereo sparkly things even, focusing on just those tiny details. And really even now, I spent in the last month going as all out as I can with that. This new song that I'm working out, I did the intro. I had panned the whole chord progression to like kind of more to the left side, and then panned some strings more to the right side and tried to balance it out. And in full with the vocals and everything, I mean, you don't even notice the fact that they're like really being too hard panned. It sounds very even and very frontal. But it was the first time that I'd really worked with that much of like a dynamic shift instead of just having everything like in typical EDM fashion, just, you know, nice in your face. So that way when you're playing on a big speaker system, you know, it sounds nice and even for everybody that's enjoying it.
Right.
But experimenting a lot more with the at-home listening experience. How can I make things sound really cool in the headphones and get all these cool textures? A great reference for that I've been using is Grant's music. His like intros and the way that he has these like sweeping textures and things. That's what I'm trying to achieve right now, I'd say, is that sense of space and depth.
My gosh, can we give some respect to Grant?
I love Grant. He's so talented. I reached out to him recently asking if there was any chance that he'd be able to like do any sort of lessons or something for helping me out with that sense of texture and depth.
Right.
Just like I assumed, he's too busy, which I would imagine. But that's not to say I'm definitely not going to be doing a deep dive into his music and trying to analyze his mixing techniques.
My gosh, he's just so good, so consistently good.
Yeah.
I remember first seeing his stuff like Cloud9, Clockwork, back in the day, and I was like so blown away by how creative it was.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't into the scene enough, but like whenever I heard his music, there was nobody who I could compare him to. I thought his music was so unique and so specialized to just him, and I was just like blown away by it, you know. And like you said, also the technical aspects of what he does as well was just completely admirable. And again, he's actually in the same vein we talked about before. He's another artist who changed his name because he used to be Grant Bowtie back in the day.
Yeah.
And now he's just Grant. I would love to. I think it's probably pretty obvious, but I'd love to hear him explain like why he changed his name in that case as well.
I think it's the same thing of just like making yourself very easy to remember, very easy to understand. You know, maybe there are some problems with getting that across to different audiences around the world, right?
Yeah, and also like to put Bowtie in the end of your name, he might have felt kind of cringe about that as well. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear what his reasons for changing it. Regardless, the music is always incredible. So, you know, you mentioned just now about like the panning and kind of the dynamic, the audio dynamics of music. So I wanted to push you a little bit on that. Do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Maybe not a perfectionist, because I know for a fact that I'll let things slide sometimes, and I won't push myself to make those final changes. But I definitely try to include a lot of detail in those things and achieve a certain style of my mix. And the reason I wouldn't say a perfectionist is just the reason that like I have songs that I'll put out that I know aren't perfect. Because perfect to me in my mind means probably not releasing a song for years, because I need it to have that exact mix that I'm trying to achieve. At the end of the day, referencing back to Grant again, I know I'm not going to have a mix as dynamic as his. But if I can even slightly get too close to achieving that, then, I mean, it'll be good enough for me, as long as I know I've put in the hours. I've done everything I can to reach that point. If I can't get past that and there's a brick wall, to not shut the project down or to wait for it. If it's basically a finished song, like there are people that are going to enjoy that. There's people that aren't going to be looking for that level of quality and stuff, but to keep building up your skills so that you can apply that to the next one instead of getting too caught up with the track that you're at the moment.
Super healthy perspective, and thanks for explaining that, because my concern is whenever people hear this podcast, like they might talk about that very specific thing and just make them hyper focus on it even more so and limit them from actual content output, which I see. I'm sure you've seen it as well. It happens so much, man. It happens too damn much. Like there's so many artists that there's an artist I know specifically that like they've been making music for like the past, I've known them for like 3 years now, and still no content output. You know, their skills are at more than high enough quality, but they're still like, no, I gotta fix this, and I'm like, yeah, there's time for that. You know, you're always gonna be making music. You know. So like thank you for explaining that a little bit more. To keep the conversation going a little bit longer on this.
Sure.
Do you feel like, I want to know about how did you develop that mindset of it's good enough? Was that something that you always had, or was it something you had to get better at?
it's kind of I said this in the live stream yesterday too, but the music that I produce is strictly for myself, and it's only recently that I've started to actually consider the wider audience and, oh, how can I actually get more plays on my music? But none of the music that I've released so far, and even the next 3 releases that I have coming out, didn't have any of that kind of thinking in mind. It's always been make music that I enjoy for myself, and if it gets to a point where I'm happy with it and I'm like, yeah, you know what, I could go for a walk and listen to this in my headphones and not be like, oh, this needs to change and this needs to change and this needs to change, then it's good enough for me, you know? If I'm not constantly thinking about all the tweaks that can be made, and if I'm at a point where I'm kind of bricking a little bit, you can always get feedback and you can always apply more to your music, and I'm sure if I sat there and did a deep dive, I'd be able to make any of my previous songs, you know, better than they were. But at a point where I'm enjoying it and I can listen to it from start to finish and not be like, well, that definitely needs to be changed, then it's usually pretty solid enough. And with the mixing, just good mixing practice, and the fact that I've been doing the whole music and my style pretty consistently for a long time, it's really sped up the process too. So I'm spending less time maybe on the fundamentals of the mixing and more time on trying out new mixing techniques to kind of push my boundary and do things that I'm not even thinking of while listening to the song, you know, and that maybe that panning thing is about a question of it. Like my song Reflections, for example, I thought was my most dynamic song by far. But after I just did this new panning experiment of all these different elements and things, I would have loved to go back on that song and just go nuts on reworking some of the stereo elements. Yeah. But at the time, I wasn't even thinking of those things. And I'm sitting there like, it's a pretty dynamic mix. Good job, man. Let's put it out. So things change, of course, over time, but you can't get too caught up and hold yourself back.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't, you know, because we are, like we've been saying a lot already, like, you know, we're always growing and developing. So, you know, you are who you are at that moment, and the next moment you're going to be something different. And that's okay, because we want to grow, we want to develop. That's the whole point, you know, is about getting to a place of fulfillment and happiness. But at the same time, so one more thing before we move forward, like, doing it for yourself, I fully agree with that. And I think that's so important because that leads to so much happiness and fulfillment and sustainability as a content creator, as an artist, because you're not going to stop if you're doing it for yourself. You know, you love what you do, and so you want to be doing it. However, a lot of people, I don't want to generalize, but I do think that something people struggle with is so much judgment for themselves, being very self-critical, right? So that even if they make something, they become their own worst critic to the point they can't even enjoy it because they're comparing themselves to another person, right? And again, it's comparison, because they're comparing to it like Virtual Riot or Skrillex, and therefore saying like, oh, it's not as good as them, therefore it sucks, right? So it's not, that's not focused on who they are as a person. Like if they take that comparison away, I'm sure they would enjoy it, you know, a lot more than they think they do. But I did want to ask you, Dan, one more thing about that. Do you feel like you are a very self-critical person, or are you the kind of person that's always had a self-esteem and self-love for yourself?
A good mix of both. I think I have my times of, you know, having that self-esteem, and then I have times where I'm like, this is not good and I need to rethink my entire direction. I had mentioned this again in live yesterday, but being especially surrounded in the new upcoming color-based rhythm dubstep community, guys like Skybreak and Sharks, and in more of the Rushdown community, even people like Azora, it's really tempting and to kind of push that sound and to want to stay within that circle because I have so many contacts and so many people within it. But I know it's not exactly the direction that I want to push my music. It's very similar in the way that it's very synth-based and it's very colorful and it's very fresh and melodic. But I'm not trying to go down as much of like that heavy, really like, I don't know, chonky bass sort of route, if that's a good way to describe it. And being able to separate yourself from the group sometimes and make music that even they might not appreciate as much sometimes is pretty hard, because I want to make songs that my friends can listen to and obviously listen to the first 5 seconds and go, what, this is so sick, you know? I shouldn't have them sitting there and just slowly bopping their head and then the song ends and they're like, hey, yeah, that was really nice, man, good job. There's a huge difference of like, what's the word, I guess, how good it feels for you. It's the same thing as when people get a certain amount of likes on Instagram. You get that dopamine boost of like, oh, I did something really cool there. And when you don't get that, sometimes it doesn't feel so satisfying. You might feel like you put your time into a place that wasn't as worth it as if you were to do something else. But in the long run, you have to realize there are millions and millions of people in the world and they haven't heard of you yet. They haven't heard your stuff yet. And you're going to get those reactions from different crowds, but you can't be expecting them to just come. You can't expect any sort of reaction at all. You have to be doing it for yourself. You have to understand the music you want to make, love what you make, and love it yourself. Like you said, have that self-esteem, have that self-love to say, like, I enjoy this. Doesn't matter if X and X and X person don't, even if I hang out with them all the time. You know, you got to know yourself and what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely, man. I love that. And yo, by the way, like, the industry and the internet teach you that, like, right off the bat. Like, yeah. I used to have that mentality when I first got started in the game of like, oh, this is the song that's gonna make me blow up. This is the video that's gonna make everyone notice me. And like, nope, no one saw that shit. No one saw it. You know, like I think you learn pretty quickly that it's not the first song, it's not the 5th video, it's not the 100th Instagram post. It's just like being in it. And and it's actually an empowering thing, because once you realize that no one's looking at you, no one knows who the fuck you are, then it forces you to start justifying yourself for yourself. It's like, oh, nobody cares. Okay, so what do I want to do instead? Like you said, Dan, about like how can you impress your friends, how you can get that shocked reaction, how you can get like that recognition by going your own route rather than playing the comparison game of like, I'm better than you, you're worse than me. Like doing it for yourself is so important in the long run, even though it's challenging to get into it first. What's your learning process look like, Dan? You've already mentioned about doing deep dives on Grant and other musicians. Like, what is the learning process like for you?
This was also mentioned, yeah, in the live. There are a lot of things that we talked about in the live.
Right, it's like coming up again. So
if anyone hasn't seen that, yeah,
jump on
the
Instagram.
Soda Shop Instagram. If you go to the IGTVs, we did an awesome live stream where we talked about a whole bunch of cool topics that we might or might not get to today. But one of them that was discussed for sure was like the idea that there needs to be more than just passion, I guess, when going into the music field if you really want to succeed. If you're doing it as a hobby, then of course, you know, sit there, be creative and enjoy it. But you can't complain when years down the road, you see there are people that, you know, are getting ahead because they've really got their nose in the books, or because they're trying to understand the business side of music and how promotion works and how to network yourself and get in contact with these bigger opportunities. There's a whole lot that goes into being a successful producer, and it's more than just making music. There's personality, there's your brand, identity, a whole ton of things that wrap into it.
Advertisement, image, so much.
Oh yeah. But like we were mentioning earlier in discussion, if you love what you're doing and you understand your style and your genre and what you're trying to achieve, and you really just push that narrative, you're going to see a whole lot of success compared to the people that have the connections pre-established and are trying to go the easy route. You were talking again about like knowing your style and whether people like it or not. Even if you make something and nobody likes it, it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't like it. It just means that the people that you've shown it to, the people that you have in your circle, might not appreciate it. There's millions of people in the world.
Yes.
And if you can find a way to just reach those ears and still be passionate about what you're doing, then you're going to see true success. And if you look at any artist in any genre who's at the top of their game, they love what they do. And in the context of EDM, looking at an artist like Skrillex, he's not only a great producer, but he loves what he does. And that's why he was one of the founding artists for the whole genre, is because he had a team behind him that was able to get him to millions and millions of ears. He showed people that he loved what he did. He was personality heavy. He brought his skating attitude, his rock attitude, everything about him to the table, and people vibed with that. They liked it. It reached out to a lot of people. And through that understanding and just making the right, careful, coordinated moves, he's at the top of the game now. And we even see, going back to Virtual Riot now, he's experimented with all genres of music, clearly just been making the type of stuff that he likes in the moment. It's not about the audience dictating it. He's been playing what he wants to get that reaction for. And now moving into more of the pop scene, I believe he's working with Justin Bieber on producing some songs and things. It's because it's something I suppose that he would want to do, right? You're moving into your own fields, and as you get bigger as an artist, you get more opportunities. It's whether you choose to take them or not.
That's awesome. Yo, Dan, I'm so glad you kind of said that, because it's the message I push a lot on my Instagram page and social media content. Everything you said just now, dude, like about how if the people right now don't enjoy it, it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't enjoy it. You know, the fact that like it's not just one element of success. It's not just music. It's not just painting. Like it's advertising, marketing, networking, developing. Like I love everything you said, because it just echoes the same things I've been telling people for the past 2 years. So it's cool, because I don't know. I hope that, I don't don't know, you know, back to what you said before, you know, we keep bringing up a lot of stuff in the live stream, and you talked about like knowing your values and acting from your values. Like, that's what this comes down to. Like, at this point, when I first got into doing content creation, especially because I kind of woke a little bit in like the life development scene, one of the first things I noticed after listening to all like the most successful like life coaches, Tony Robbins, Les Brown, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tom Bilyeu, like all these people who are like touted like the most successful life coaches. One of the first things that I noticed, no, not first things, rather like after about 6 or 7 months, was that they were all saying the same things, just in a different way, with a different audience in mind, with a different context applied. And also, like, they were also like repeating themselves. Like, they wouldn't go off that much from the same core values that they have. And that's like, and I think that when I was younger, like, I was all about like what's new, what's exciting, what's different, what's unique, right? And I still love that because that's creativity, that's like development, discovery. But you also have to realize that like life is not as complicated as we might think it is. It really just comes down to some very core values that we've already discussed today, such as knowing your like self-awareness and compassion and understanding and love. And like, if you have like those values right there, then get comfortable with them, because you're going to be living from those values for a very, very long time. You know, it's not like they change. Like, you know, you understand who you are, and then you keep being who you are. You keep being who you are. You keep being who you are. And that authenticity leads to fulfillment and success in whatever definition success is for you. To your point, Skrillex and Virtual Riot, who have been in the game for well over 10 years, and they're still at the top of the game because they're authentic. And they just continue to be who they are. So for anybody watching this, like, authenticity is the fucking game. Authenticity is the fucking game. If you know who you are, just fucking be who you are, because that's how you unlock life. That's how you win. This might tie into the next question. The next thing I wanted to ask you about, Dan, because you're someone who's also been in the internet scene, the music scene, the content creation scene for, again, 5 to 6 years now. It's been quite a long time, man. Like, what's kept you in the game for all this time?
Being passionate about it, as we've already talked about, but also exploring new ways to express that sort of creativity that I guess that I have. I do like animation, I do some graphic design. Graphic design is actually the main thing I guess that I'm doing aside from music. I'm studying it in university right now, and I have a job at a graphic design firm, and that's kind of my source of income right now, aside from, you know, the small checks that I get from music here and there, which are very appreciated. But I've taken a long time to be able to get to also. If you're in it for the money, then you might be in it for the wrong reasons. You might have to kind of reconsider your approach there. But being in graphic design, being into photography, being into the animation aspect of things now, and combining all these different tools that have helped me to shape what Paper Skies is now. From the very start, I've done all of my own branding, all of my own advertising, all the social media posts that I have up and everything. And being able to curate those and control it myself, I think attributes to the sense of identity that I might have as an artist, and the sense, like you said, of personality and being authentic and being real to yourself. Because when you go on any of my socials, any of my pages, you're getting everything created 100% by me. It's not a marketing scheme. It's not trying to stay on brand, to stay relevant. It's not trying to go with the trends. It's just everything that I want for myself as an artist.
Right, man. Right. Yeah. And that can be scary for people to kind of like reveal who they are on the internet, because if you're not confident in who you are, if you're not accepting of who you are, you definitely don't want to put it out online, because now you are kind of nervous about yourself, and then other people have the chance to judge you. And so it makes a lot of people like not be open on the internet. A lot of people, you know, be secretive or avoid social media completely. Let's go into that just as a quick, like, kind of like a side detour. Like, was it uncomfortable for you to get onto the internet and to be showing your face and to be sharing your content and like be doing stuff publicly on the internet, or was that totally natural for you to slide into?
At first, absolutely. Just because, again, I wasn't confident with myself. It wasn't anything about the internet in particular, but the fact that I was unconfident around people in general. And this is a whole story that one day I want to be able to tell in full. Right. But when I first started my music production journey, specifically, it was about grade 8 when I first started, but things started to pick up and I got more serious with it the 2 years to follow. But those 2 years were also probably the hardest years of my life, and I hit a really low point. And not being confident in yourself and not having that self-love that I think you need in order to be creative and to be passionate about what you do. it made producing and putting out music really, really difficult. But that's also why it was treated so much more as a hobby and something for myself, and never as a career or anything like that, because I was only producing music in the short amount of free time that I had for myself. And I was doing it out of love because I wanted to, not because I'd even think I'd finish the song and release it on SoundCloud. And especially with my old discography, that's why there are big jumps in releases between like 8 to 10 months sometimes for when I'd release a song. I might have been like super demotivated, or there might have been things going on in my life that were just really, really hard. And being able to somehow manage a brand didn't seem like a priority. And making music was something I did strictly for myself. It was almost kind of like a therapy, where whenever I was like down and sad about things, I could just sit down in the DAW and express myself creatively and make things that kind of escape the bubble of everything happening in real world, right?
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, no, it's true. Like, in that come up time, like we're so affected by everything around us. Even as adults, even as you get more confident with it, you can still be affected by the shit that's going on around you, whether in real life or on the internet. It can definitely affect your mental health and affect your creativity and everything, for sure.
Yeah.
But after being in the game, at least in my experience, like, you do start to understand stuff a little bit more. So you're not as affected by the personal drama or the internet drama. You can kind of understand that life is long and stuff changes, and so, I don't know, like, for me, having been at very low points and very high points, I've kind of realized that, everything comes and goes. So rather than like riding that low and riding that high, I feel like I definitely try to have a lot more stability in my life, just in terms of like recognizing, like, okay, this is a low point. Cool. This is a high point. Cool. And like continuing forward no matter what, So, and that's something I feel like.
Recognizing those?
Go ahead, jump in, man. Jump in.
Recognizing those and like stapling on them and not thinking them as a bad thing. When you hit those low points, understanding that the only reason you're not at that low point anymore is because you've grown as a person and you've developed. That's the best way to think about it. Everything that happened to me in the past, I'm not regretful for anything that went on. I don't get sad thinking about the past. There were a lot of sad things that happened, for sure. And in the moment, maybe I was very uncomfortable and not feeling good and not being myself. But looking back on that experience, it's the only reason I can be who I am today, and in my opinion, be like an emotionally understanding person, right?
Yeah.
And for people that don't have those experiences, maybe they come later in life, and for some people, maybe they don't ever. They've always had kind of that slow upward progression, but you notice it within their personality and the decisions that they make and the types of influence that they have on people. And it's, again, the difference between someone who, in the case of music, might be getting in the industry for the sake of the money and doing it because they care about it. You have people, and there's nothing wrong with chasing the money and doing it for the percentage of work, but you're not going to hear that same passion in their music. You're not going to hear that same creativity. And I can't stress this enough. I guess people can try to prove me wrong if they'd like, but I think the most creative, the most passionate, the most like undiscovered talent comes from obviously the people who are in it because they love it, people who know what they want to do and aren't after that big bag or whatever it is, right? Because if you're after that, you can get there, but you're likely going to get there going the more generic route of connecting with people, getting on this label. Congratulations, you're getting 1 million on your releases, but not a whole lot of people have your name in the back of their heads when they think of that genre.
Yeah, it's different. Like you said, like, to be fair to everyone, it's all about what your ambition is. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And then taking the proper path it takes to get there. And everyone does have to have their own kind of journey on that to figure out who they are and what they want to do. Like you said, though, I do fully agree, Dan. Like, the relatability aspect, I think, is what sets us apart as individuals, especially when we're trying to become an icon of sorts. Because whenever you've been in it, other people can sense that. They know that you've been in it, either because you've documented it, either because you've talked about it, either because you're reflecting it or sharing it. It's the same way with hip hop, right? Like in hip hop, like, so much of it is about, well, back in the day, they called it street cred, like your street cred, people who like came up from the streets and like they told stories about that. And so it became more relatable, became more like you felt like drawn to it in a sense because you were hearing these real life raw stories, you know, from Tupac or Biggie or NWA, and it was like it was real, you know, it wasn't like manufactured, it wasn't just like a boasting or bragging, you know, it was about real people living real lives, and it wasn't always pretty, but it was definitely real, and that made us more. It made me gravitate towards it more, but I think it's the same way even for now, you know, whenever we see these artists on the internet, whether it's EDM or lo-fi, whenever they get the chance to be open and talk about their lives, like we can relate with them more because we realize they're a human and they're using their pain in a productive way. I want to ask another follow-up question, Dan, because I think it'd be cool to talk about for the audience listening. It's not easy to get to a place where you can be okay with your regrets or past mistakes. You know, we talked about how we've both gone through struggles and difficulties in the past, but thankfully for you and me both, we're able to look back on that and be like, I'm a better person now.
Yep.
I would like to hear, in your opinion, what did it take for you to get to that place of acceptance and non-judgment towards who you used to be, or what you went through, or what people subjected you to in the past? Like, what did it take for you to come to a place of healing and acceptance of all that stuff?
It started with making myself happy, because I was in a very sad place. I didn't understand the type of person that I was becoming, who I wanted to be, and the direction that I was taking my life, with the people that I was hanging out with, and the relationship that I had with my family, and so many other factors. But slowly mending a lot of those broken bonds, and coming to understand myself and what I wanted more in life and my goals and my priorities. It really helped, I guess, fix a lot of those problems that I thought were a lot worse than they were. That could have easily been fixed by just understanding me and understanding what I want and what's going to make me happy. And even recently, I know we had a talk on the live about this, but there was a really dark time that hit with COVID where I was overworking myself and I was trying so hard to exceed the expectations so that by the end of COVID, I could be on top of things per se, you know, be the one who comes out on top. And I really burned myself out, and it got to a really tough point where I was just overworking. I was unhappy. I was in a space that wasn't making me comfortable, in a dark basement room with no sunlight. And being able to just change all of that and change the way I was working felt so easy to do. I was shocked because in the moment, it didn't even seem like an option.
What was that point for you, Dan? I don't think you've mentioned it yet, or if you did, I might have forgotten it. You know, I am familiar with that dark place you were at and everything. What was the moment that made you realize, like, I can't keep doing this, something's got to change? Was it someone talking to you? Was it a self-reflection? Like, what moment made you realize that you had to do something different?
I had a bit of kind of like a lash out experience, which is super uncommon for me. It's not something that I typically do. I'm usually a pretty calm and controlled person. I feel like very emotionally understanding, because I felt like, you know, that lowest low point that I'd hit was years ago, you know, and when you've hit that low, it's almost like you ask yourself, like, how did I let myself get close to this point again? You know, it doesn't seem like something you can do. And with the understanding that I have, I shouldn't even be able to decline at this kind of like rapid speed, right? But I had made a tweet about it. I just pulled it up here so I can kind of read out quickly. But all the things that were happening in the moment, where I lost one of my jobs. There was a horrible at-home family situation. I was getting taken advantage of by some people in the industry. Losing interest in a lot of my hobbies like photography, since I was never going outside, never seeing sunlight. I lost a massive down payment of cash. My doctor labeled me as high risk for COVID, basically because of like an asthma problem that I have and a thing where I generate too much phlegm in my system. He said, if you get COVID, you're gonna die. And I'm like, well, I'm 19 and I'm healthy and I go out and I exercise. What do you mean? And he's like, it means what I mean. You're gonna pass away, dude. Like, there's not a good chance that you're getting out of this.
It's like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah. And then my social life was just gone. And on top of that, I have a memory problem that started developing over COVID. And I realized that it wasn't even developing. It was just that I thought it was, because my days were so uninspired. They were so uneventful. And I wasn't making memories. And it felt like a whole year had gone by without anything going on. And these things were always in the back of my head, kind of circulating, but I'd block them out and just say, well, keep working, because by the time you get out of COVID, you're going to feel so much better, you're going to be way ahead of the game, and you're going to be happy with yourself because you received that physical gain and that financial gain and all the things that don't attribute to your emotional self and you in the moment. And I had a bit of a breakdown one day. And I stood up from that and I thought to myself, what am I doing? Like, why am I letting myself get to this point again? And I sat and I did some huge reflection. And I talked to some friends over Discord that were there for me. Special thanks to, I don't even need to say, if I just say thank you to the homies, everyone's going to know who I'm talking about. But yeah, I've had people that really, really had my back and brought me up and made sure that I was okay. And again, hitting that point that I did, it's only allowed me to grow so much more and think of COVID in a completely different perspective. And I'm happier now than I think I've ever been, really.
Oh, it's so powerful, dude. It's so powerful. COVID was super hard for all of us, and I think we've all kind of had our own experiences and struggles, you know, in relation to COVID and our mental health situation, and obviously life situation, like you mentioned, a lot of personal life stuff going on as well. Two things I kind of hear when you're talking about that is, first of all, that community is so important, you know, and whether it's in real life, but way more often it's going to be on the internet. Like in my case, in your case, you know, there's obviously people who we really trust or we really vibe with on the internet, and it's so powerful to have those people, you know. I think a long time ago, I think it's definitely been a lot like less considered to be true nowadays. Like there used to be a huge conversation about real life versus online friends, and like online friends are fake or whatever, but like no, I strongly disagree with that from personal experience. Like build community wherever you can, build it in real life if that works for you, on the internet if that works for you, but like having community that can check you or kind of give you the guidance you need is so important. And I can't even remember what the other point was, but so rather just like, dude, share with us, like, what did you take from that breakthrough? Like, what did you learn from it all? What are some of the biggest lessons? I know that happiness was one of them. I think defining success was another one for you. Like, if you could share with the audience, because it'd be awesome. Like, what did you take away from the whole experience?
If anybody is interested, I made this post on Twitter, and I've actually even pinned it to my bookmark bar because I did not realize while I was typing it out how many situations I can refer this to. And I think especially recently, we've hit the year mark of us being in the COVID trials now. Everyone is really down bad. I've had so many friends that I weren't expecting to reach out to me that have been messaging me and saying like, hey man, I don't know who else to talk to. Like, can we just hop in a call and can we chat? I'm in a really bad place right now. And I've subconsciously always referred back to this post that I made. So if anyone's interested, it's on my Twitter, but I basically said that the focus needs to shift. People need to stop worrying about the grind, about the future, about their income and their well-being, because the things that define success, the only thing that defines success is whether you are happy with your life or not. In the case of music, you know, artists want to reach certain stats. They want to be able to play certain shows. They want to inspire others. They want to make a name for themselves, and they want to be known worldwide. But you don't need those things to be happy. You can find the happiness elsewhere. And if you get to that point, it's more of a privilege. It's more of an added bonus that you get because you put in that work, but you did it in a time when you were comfortable. And you can't get to that level unless you are happy, unless you are satisfied with yourself. And the big shift for me was when I changed my perspective on COVID. And instead of being like, oh man, we're stuck in this temporary thing and we're all waiting for it to end, we need to adapt to it, as strange as it sounds. Like, life as we knew it was a privilege. We were born in a time with technology, being able to go out, see our friends, do all these crazy things and go to these events that at the time, you know, the event industry in particular was really, really going out of control, jumping up like crazy, right? But those things were a privilege, and life hasn't gotten worse. It's just that it's changed. And when change occurs, it forces people out of their comfort zones. And when you're out of your comfort zone, it leads to emotions that you might have not encountered, or uncontrollable emotions that lead to this big psychosis of thinking, and can create a lot of problems. But when you think of life as a privilege and you stop thinking about how things used to be, and you don't live your life with that regret of not having done those things when you had the opportunity, you're going to find that you still can do a lot of these things. You still can push the bubble and the boundary, and find ways to stay safe within this condition. I mean, like I have even with this whole COVID measure, and see people. I have a friend that's staying over right now. He's in the other room just waiting for this to be wrapped up. But I did not think that I would be seeing him anytime soon. And it was the whole thing of, I called him up, let him know my condition, told me, you know, how safe he was being and everything, the circumstances that he was, even quarantined himself to be able to see me.
Awesome.
And now we're spending the whole weekend together, and it feels amazing. And there's definitely ways to change your situation. You just need to adapt, think outside the box, and realize that this whole COVID lifestyle that we're in is still life, but it's a very, very different form of life, you know? And we need to change if you're going to be happy, because it's not about working your ass off now so that 4 or 5 years from now, when things are totally back to normal, you can be happy then. Make yourself happy now, because then it's going to be so much easier to work 2-3 times harder like you've been trying to do, right?
My gosh.
And it'll come self-consciously.
Yeah, I know. I love it, man. I love it. I agree with it completely. I think it's always dangerous to be living in the mindset of what could be or what should be or what used to be. And as stereotypical as it sounds, the problem with those things is they're not real. They're just not real. Like, you know, they used to be real, but they're not real anymore. And so you are where you are. And with that information, and again, not minimizing the struggles, the difficulties we're going through, we are struggling. We're going through problems, but we're going through problems right here, right now. So what can we do to fix them right now? Because we can't just live in a problem forever. We got to address this stuff. Like you said, how could you be happy right now, not happy 5 years later? And to follow up on that point as well, you know, I think we need to change the thinking about happiness as well. I saw a random internet meme, but somehow internet memes also have truth. Like happiness isn't. It said something along the lines of happiness is not something you find, it's something you build. You know, and to that point, you know, like it's not like 5 years and then I'm going to be happy. It's like I'm a little bit happy now, and in 5 years I'm going to be way more happy. It's a process of like becoming more fulfilled and more satisfied in your life. So that's amazing, dude. Real quick, as a quick question, how do you define success for yourself, Dan? How do you define success?
For me, success is just whether or not I'm in a good place, whether or not I'm mentally stable, and whether or not, you know, I'm able to just live. I said this in the post too, but I am so privileged to have the friends that I do, the people that are out there to support me. And even without that, I have to realize, you know, all of the good that's in my life. Like I'm alive, I'm healthy, I've got people around me, and I'm doing what I love. I'm making music, I'm studying graphic design, I'm making, you know, an income doing the things that are for me. And if I were to take a shot and step into like the world of business exclusively and work in a profession that does have a more clear-cut path, sure, but, you know, is not going to bring me that same sort of happiness and fulfillment, then I think I'm really bringing my life down the whole, you know, the wrong kind of path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome, dude, and I'm so glad that you have people to reach out to. I think that's another thing I noticed when I was doing preparation for the podcast was how active you are on social media, Twitter. So Discord are the biggest ones, I think, for you, but also obviously Instagram. You do YouTube content as well. And you've said before that you prioritize communicating with people because if they took the time to listen to your music, you feel like you deserve to talk to them. You've mentioned that on multiple occasions. Has that always been a practice for you, or is that something that you had to that you built and became more conscious of over time?
It's always been a thing subconsciously. I think, like, it's not that I'm trying to. The one thing that I guess irks me a little bit is I'll get in calls with people and they'll be like, oh, hey, you're that guy that gets back to every single comment on every platform. And I'm like, yep, that's me. And the idea behind it is some people, I guess, spin the mindset of why I do that. And they might think to themselves, oh, he's doing it so that he can get more fans and so that more people can like get to him. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, that'll happen. If you get back to every single person, of course you're going to have more engaged people because they're going to be happy that, you know, you got back to them in some cases, right? But that's not the reason that I'm doing it. The reason that I'm doing it is because I put time into something. And just like when that first song came out, to think that there are 100 people that listened to that song and that could be standing in a room and then maybe enjoyed it, maybe didn't. But if 100 people listened to it, and 2 of those 100 people went out of their way to leave a like and leave a comment like, hey, this is a cool track. They're pushing me. They're supporting me. They've got me in their algorithm now. They're doing what they can. You know, even if it's a small part, even if they don't realize it. And the least that I can do is say thank you for appreciating the work that wasn't made for you, but made for myself, right? Because if other people are appreciating what I love and what I enjoy, it's the same thing. There's plenty of people that probably wouldn't like it. You know, there's tons of people that could go out of their way and say, fuck you, this song's garbage, right? I'm not going to reply to those guys and say thank you. No way. But the fact that you're not one of those people, the fact that you showed love to it and you made me feel good about something that I created, like that's awesome. You know, thanks for putting my ego up, right?
Yeah. It's momentum. It's just momentum. I think we're all positive momentum for each other. You know, you put something out, someone else vibes with it, you know, they let you know, you let them know, like it just builds momentum and positivity, I think, throughout the whole like internet ecosphere. It feels good to make other people feel good. You know, like why would it not? I want to ask you real quick, and I'm sure you've talked about this a lot in other interviews. I've heard you mention it in one specific, but I'm sure you've done it with other people as well.
Sure. Time
management, balancing time, because you do have your hand in so many projects, and then obviously, like we're talking about right now, you get back to every single person on the internet as much as you can. first of all, let's go with that one. I think that'd be it's very nuanced, but I think it's also important for creators, because creators, obviously communication is such an important part of building a brand and building your community, right? In an organic way, not in like a monetization, kind of prostitute the audience or whatever. Like, communication with your audience is so key, but also creating is so key. And there's a balance between those two things of communicating with audiences, hearing their stories, and providing value to them, but then also like, making what you want to make and putting stuff out that you want to create. Is it difficult at all for you to balance the communication with the creation, or how do you deal with that?
You have to do it in a way where it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like something that you're just doing because you have free time and you're sitting on the couch and you're like, hey, why not? I do have a pretty tight schedule on most days. I mean, even today, my process is wake up in the morning, go to my Notepad app, which I even have right here, scheduled this podcast and everything, and write down everything that needs to get done in that day, the hour at which it starts, then how many hours it's going to take me to get done generally, right? And I always overestimate. So that way, there you go. That way, if you finish things early, you have time to now get back to those comments if you want. You have to be in that situation of like wanting to do it. And the biggest gift that the internet has given us is the mark as unread function, because you can open a message, and if it says, hey man, I love your music, it takes me 2 seconds to be like, oh yeah, thank you so much, I appreciate it, right? Yeah. But then I might open a message and it's like a long paragraph asking me a bunch of questions and stuff, right? And I don't have time to get back to those ones all the time, right? So at least having that function, I can, leave it as unread and get back to it when I have that time. And I try to set, I'd say, at least once a week, a couple hours where I can just make sure that I've cleared off everything, because it's kind of like I don't want them piling up. Otherwise, it's going to get a bit much. But also not making it a priority ever. Like, especially recently, I've been calming down a lot more with getting back to comments. Like, every single person who replied to every single one of my tweets, I was getting back to. And that was getting too much, because now when you have people quoting your stuff, and if you do like one of those question polls, there's so many answers, and a lot of the answers are even, wording a reply that you've already gotten back to, right? So it gets a lot harder now, but managing it at a level that you're comfortable for. If you're replying to all these comments because you want to see gain out of it, because you want to like get that stat increase from having people appreciate the fact that you got back to them, and again, you're doing it for the wrong reason, right?
Yeah.
Get back to it when you're comfortable, get back to it when you can. That's all I've been doing. I never like force myself to have to like, oh man, I got to get back to these before I can start doing my work. No, do your work first when you have free time. And if you want to, then you can do it. And it just happens that for me, I've got enough time, and I don't have, I guess, like crazy active enough of a fan base that every time I refresh my phone, there's like 5 new messages coming in, Sure. Maybe it's like 1 if I'm lucky, right? Every hour or something. So why not, right?
Scheduling and then authenticity in execution. Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, edit button on Twitter, yes or no?
No.
Okay. You mentioned the unread feature. I was wondering how you felt about the edit button as well. Yeah. Oh man.
I wouldn't do an edit button or anything like that. I think once you've said something, and if you worded it wrongly, I mean, in a lot of cases that can lead to a lot of humor, and in some cases, obviously that can lead to some backlash. But people need to get more comfortable with that. The second you add an edit button, life becomes more manufactured, because people are saying things the exact way that they want to say it in the moment. And that's the great best thing about like real life interaction and real life conversation, is that you're saying what's coming to your head, and you can tell a lot about a person based on what just pops into their mind. Even if they said it wrong, even if they admitted, oh man, sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way, I totally take that back. Seeing that reaction from them is also going to prove how genuine that comment was. You know what I mean? Because on Twitter, I can say something bad and then 2 minutes later quickly edit it, but not have that sense of like urgency of like, oh shit, I said that. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Right?
Yeah.
And if you never see that reaction of them apologizing for it, and all of a sudden you just see edited a minute ago and they changed it really quick, then you're like, are they trying to protect themselves from getting slammed, or are they actually sorry about that?
Wow.
So I wouldn't do an edit button.
Very good. Yeah, I guess it goes back to what we said before about if you're going to live on the internet, you got to be real, and you got to be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah.
And you got to be comfortable with yourself. Otherwise, you get eaten alive. Eaten alive. I don't know if people like understand like how busy it can get for for an internet content creator. If you don't mind breaking it down, as much as you're comfortable with sharing, you don't have to be completely
Sure.
transparent, but like just to give people, anyone who's not a creator, anyone who's not an internet icon of sorts, like what does a normal day look like for you, Dan?
For me, let's talk about the music production day. Recently, days have been so random in the last month, just because, like I said, I've been trying to like shift my schedule around and figure out what's this new plan of action that I want to have.
Yep.
But back when COVID first hit, I'd say that that's when there was a mix of really working, and at the same time staying healthy, right? I wasn't like, it wasn't a bad mindset for me to be in. But those days, what I was doing was waking up early in the mornings. The earlier you can get up, the better. You want to start your day running. Otherwise, it's going to start falling apart. You're going to snowball down. But wake up early, set up my schedule, grab some breakfast, be on my computer immediately, getting back to comments or getting through the day of what needs to be done, whether it's working on music or editing my next YouTube upload or getting social media posts ready or figuring out, okay, what am I going to put on my story that's actually going to get people engaged and get people to understand me as a person a little bit more and show off my personality. And then mixing in your day-to-day life with, your career as like, an internet person, right?
Right.
How does me going out with my friends and hanging out to play some basketball become something that I can put on my story and have people relate to? And maybe even connect it to my music in a way, right? But being a creator, you always have to think about content and what is something that you can put out that's going to be a little beneficial to you, right? Everything that you do creates a reaction, whether positive or negative. And what's the way that you can get the most positive reactions just going about your day-to-day life, maybe not doing anything particularly interesting. To get to the really extreme side of things, I used to run a label called O4 Collective, and I stopped running it because it was taking over my life and becoming like a full-time job. And to talk about that time frame, which was manageable, but just it became way too much. I was waking up, my laptop was right next to me. I was opening it, getting back to emails immediately, getting in contact with whatever artist was our next release and figuring things out with them, getting in contact with whatever was our previous release and making sure that they were getting the promo ability available, contacting the staff that we had on board and making sure that they were, pushing their roles and doing the Spotify promotion that they needed to do for the day, reaching out to Facebook partners, doing like ad shares.
You were doing the graphic design for the releases as well. So.
And yeah, I was doing all the graphic design for the releases, making sure that the album cover was a reflection of our art style as well as what the artist wanted, because we really wanted to push the artist's vision.
Right.
And God, it got busy. It got really, really busy. And aside from the fact that, I was working 2 jobs at the time, a full-time student doing graphic design, doing a whole lot of urban exploration and photography and finding time to be at my friends. It was a really, really busy lifestyle, and I'm glad things have calmed down because, like I said, now I can focus on working on music more, which was the thing that amongst me mentioning all of that, you probably didn't hear, was me working on music because I was never working on music. But having that ability back to sit down and just be comfortable in the DAW and not overwhelm my schedule feels great. I gotta admit.
Nice, man. Nice. Good for you on getting your schedule back and prioritizing stuff and then taking action on the priorities, because that is it. It gets hectic, dude. It gets hectic being on the internet, being a content creator. There's so many, especially when you're creative, there's so many things you want to say yes to, and it's like yes, 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 until it becomes like no, no.
Yeah, next thing I know, like this happened recently, about a month and a half ago, I was like, oh, so I'm doing 6 online sets this week, and they're all 30-minute mixes due in the next day? Okay, let's do it.
Where's the me that said yes to this? Because I'm going to have a word with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dude, I don't want to keep you for too long. I know it's kind of going on a bit now. You did put out a song just recently called "Fold" with Sekai. Talk about that one for just a minute. Kind of introduce it to audiences.
Yeah, sure. Fold is my latest release that I put out, and I think really defines the vision of what I want Paper Skies to be a little bit more going forward. And things are always going to be changing, but the idea that having something that feels more technically thought out with a good focus on the vocals and some meaningful lyrics, and then going into a drop that's fun and exciting and creative and can be shown off in a live environment. Fold definitely pinpoints like the direction that I want to be going with things. And in terms of the lyrics with Fold, they have a deep connecting meaning to me, and there's something that actually matters to me, and I've been trying to include in my music is how do I make it, like you said, even more personal, right? How do I bring even more of myself into what I'm creating and let people become a part of not my world or anything too creative like that, but just understanding who I am and as a person, and not only liking the music, but thinking like, yeah, I could be friends with this guy if we met, you know?
For sure, man. I'll leave this one up to you, man. I'm not sure if you want to dig into that a little bit more, or should we wrap it up?
Sure.
Here? Okay. All right. Go right. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, you've talked about it a little bit. You've alluded to it a little bit already in the episode and in like the live stream last night as well. That whole like decision you're trying to come to between, you know, doing what you personally want to do versus, you know, doing what's like the easy or seemingly easy path. First off, how long have you been grappling with that for? Has it been like a year now, a few months?
I'd say about a year and a half now. I've been really trying to think about how do I make music that's going to appeal, it's a way wider of an audience, but still be exactly what I want to make, because I refuse to like conform to just like, you know, making whatever is trending in the moment. And that's actually, funny enough, if you're okay with me getting into the lyrics of Fold a little bit,
do.
what
Please
the whole
just,
song
as deep as you
is
want to
about.
go. I've got all night, man, so it's up to you.
Yeah, so Fold is literally a song about not folding under the pressure of all these new trends and all the things that are coming up right now, and sticking to your roots and knowing your identity as a person and everything. But being able to find a balance, obviously, of how can I reach out to everybody and make something that's impactful to a wide demographic of people. So now going back to the idea of the business producer and the passion producer, you got to find a balance in the middle, and you can take influence from both sides. You know, being someone who's just in it for the business and in it for the money, like people who are, I guess, more on that creative side, if you're on the parallel opposite, would probably look down on that. But I don't. If anything, I think that there's a whole lot of value that can be taken from understanding those types of people, why they're doing what they're doing, how they've gotten to the point that they are. And having spoken with a lot of artists who are in it mainly for the idea of, you know, financial security and doing music because they enjoy it, of course, and they enjoy like that, they like it. But making stuff that might not be their absolute favorite song of all time for themselves, sort of deal. You can really break down those business tactics and apply them to your own studies and the own way that you're making music, and realize really simple things that I guess only come through dialogue and conversation, right? Like, I had a talk recently with a producer that I'm collaborating with who kind of is more on that front, where he wants to make music that's going to be as reachable and wide as possible, right? And having him almost be like director of our collaboration, where I was going all out and being super creative and just doing a song that I liked, and having him be like, okay, man, so if we step this back a bit, if we kind of dumb down this idea a bit, if we maybe try this type of sound design over this type of sound design, then it'll reach out to more people. We created a song that I'm like, wow, I am so happy with this track. Like, I personally love it. And I know tons of other people are going to also, because it's a bit different for me. And I showed a couple of my friends in the car ride and stuff, and their immediate reaction was, this sounds like Paper Skies. This sounds a little less creative than the stuff that you're typically doing, but wow, like well executed, you know? And your execution can be, you know, even the things of your mixing and mastering. You can show off your production skill without having to like show off sound design that took you 12 hours to get a 0.5 second clip of a bass growl, you know? There's other ways that you can show off your production skill, without having to like go all in and spend all these time on one tiny little detail, right?
It's amazing, dude. It's a big conversation, and something that all producers have to go through, probably all artists as well, because, you know, to your point, like, it's a full-time job. Making content is a full-time job, and a lot of us aren't making enough money to live off of through our content, you know, so we have to have another side hustle or a full-time job and then come home and do this, you know, do it on the road, do it on break times between work, you know. And so you really do have to give some time and energy to the business side of stuff to figure out what tactics you can utilize, what business things you not know that you could be using, because it's learning. It's a learning process. Like, money is a learning process. Like, business is a learning process. You know, it sounds to me like you went into it pretty much, I guess, I feel like the thing that kind of holds a lot of producers back from learning those insights about business or finances is ego, because there's so much like, I gotta protect my artistic integrity or whatever. Like, did you have a lot of ego whenever you were getting this kind of feedback about, we gotta change this or do this differently, we gotta cut this back? Like, was there immediate response, like ego driven, like, no, fuck you, let's keep it creative? Or was it more like, teach me? Like, what was your immediate response to that?
Well, sometimes it's like, for example, that track that we were working on, to give it an immediate reference of it, I'd spent, I think it was like 10 hours or something on reworking the original drop idea. And I did this really creative, experimental, almost feature rhythm-y kind of drop for this track that had a very like pop EDM centralized intro, right? and I thought it flowed really well and I loved it and everything, but I sent him the track along with all the other changes I had made throughout it with the second drop too, which was more of that pop EDM style. And he got back to me and said, listen, man, the first drop is very, very cool, but it is too experimental for the type of audience that we're going for. And it's not that I scrapped that drop. Now I'm going to use it for a different song, if anything. Nice. But you have to understand the art, as the business side of it is understanding the audience that you're targeting and the type of song that you're trying to make. So that idea that I had, of course, I'm not scrapping just because it's not something that everybody's going to enjoy or that wider audience. It doesn't mean that it should get removed. It should just be placed in a different context for a different audience so you can capture a different niche. And being able to direct yourself there is the most important thing. And that's the business side of music, is knowing what audience am I, what is the target market for what I'm creating? And is that a wide audience? Is it a small one? Even if it is a small one, that's totally fine, because that means it's a niche. If you can capture a niche, if you can get one person in a small community to go, this is fucking sick, he's going to tell all of his friends in that small community about it. They're probably going to think it's sick too. And next thing you know, everybody that is in that small circle is now a fan of yours. And now you can break out of that niche, right? That's your opportunity. Because once you have that support system, you just need the people around you to talk good about you. And then they're going to start promoting you too, right?
Yep. No, absolutely. Again, it's like, I don't even know if it's considered compromise. It's more of just like knowing when to do what, it's like being creative, but then like also know when to throw the punches, when to draw back, when to dig into it, and like playing those at the right moments. And also, like you said, like is being economical. Like you don't have to trash the song. You can put that out on your own, put it out like as a B-side, like just like knowing, having a strategy and understanding the strategies to use at the right times is super, super effective.
Think of it like this, I had this talk with a friend recently, and this goes way into the whole business side of things, so I'm going to stay on here very lightly. But if you want to be successful financially in life, the way that you do that is by doing something you're passionate about that makes you happy, and then reinvesting based on other things that you're doing. So for any struggling music producers out there, to talk directly to you guys, if you want to make money directly from your music, if that's your passion, you don't want to get into the business world, you don't want to get into a different profession, you want to go all out music, then go all out music. But think a little bit more outside the box, Maybe that means doing lessons, maybe that means doing sample packs, maybe that means approaching a graphic design firm and saying, hey, I checked out your portfolio, and all the sounds that you were using in your advertisement, which I've seen this time and time again, were just free to download whoosh sound effects, you know what I mean, for transitions and stuff. Yeah. Be the sound designer that brings that firm to the next level, because then you're bringing other people value. They're going to want to bring you onto their team, right? Think outside the box, figure how you can use your creative musical abilities in other worlds, in other places of business. And even if you don't appreciate doing that as much, even if you don't have as much fun doing that as making the music, you're reinvesting in yourself, because all the money that you're going to make from doing those lessons, doing the sample packs, doing those things that you might not appreciate as much, that money goes back into promoting the creative stuff that you want to do, fun things that you do. When you're sitting there making that fun, super crazy 14-hour sound design session song, and you're ready to put it out, you now have, let's say, a $2,000 budget from all this extra work that you've been doing to promote that creative thing that you love. So reinvest in yourself, think outside the box, and there's ways to make money with everything, And that's how you find that perfect balance, is knowing how to make the money, but then knowing how to make it personal, a personal project that you can push out to people and say, hey, this is my identity, and have the budget to be able to let all these millions of people that don't even know who you are hear about you for the first time and get inspired.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. You have to do a little bit. I feel like you also have to do a little bit of trial and error to figure out what works for you exactly. Yeah. Because, maybe someone is comfortable doing the full-time, part-time job and then doing music at home. Maybe someone's more comfortable doing freelance. Maybe someone's more comfortable doing, like you said, contacting companies and saying like, hey, let's work together, let's do this or whatever. You have to try and fail till you find what works for you the best. But in the end, like you said, Dan, it's about not only being creative with music, being creative with business as well. How can you market better? How can you advertise more? How can you make money here and there? Lessons, live streams, donations, merchandise, all this kind of thing. Merchandise, you're into fashion as well, dude. Like, spaz about fashion for a hot second.
Sure. Okay. Fashion stuff. Yeah, I love fashion, and I don't think I've pushed it just enough at my brand yet. So I'm looking to start making that shift. I know in DM conversation with you, I told you about some things I've got coming up. But God, I love fashion. I love style and everything.
Why have you not put any merchandise out? Like, if I'm not mistaken, I could not find any merchandise for you online. Why not?
For me, if I do merchandise, it can't be a logo slapped on a hoodie. You know what I mean? It can't be Paper Skies in big font. I want people to be able to look at merch that I've created and say, holy shit, that's a dope shirt. Oh, wait, it's Paper Skies?
Yeah.
You know? Like, to have that instant reaction of like, I want to wear that before they realize that, oh, this is actually an EDM artist or something like that. And to not be ashamed of that either. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if I make an article of clothing and I know that like people within the rap industry are really going to appreciate the look of this, but then they look into it and they're like, oh, it's some EDM artist or something. Like, I don't want them to kind of look down on that. The design needs to be, I guess, so overwhelmingly cool within that style that it doesn't matter what's behind it, in the same way that, I mean, this gets kind of dark and stuff, but if you look at a brand like Nike and some of the bad practices that they have in terms of creating some of their clothing and things, like, it's really not looked up on, right?
Right.
But the outfits and the stuff themselves are really sick, and it's not about what it stands for. It's about the fact that, hey, I want to wear that. It looks dope. You know what I mean? And if I can get to that level of just making stuff that looks so cool, which I know I can, it's just about being able to sell, because merch, producing custom designs like that, like not just like logo on a hoodie, that's where the price goes from here to here. Because I would want to make like designer level sort of stuff where like you look on the inside part of the hoodie and it says like Paper Skies in tiny little font here, you know, like the tiniest of details. Because for me, and in all the clothing that I wear, if anybody were to look at the posts that I make on Twitter, I love clothing that the more you analyze it and the more you break it down, the more you're like, oh wait, that is this and this, and oh shit, I didn't even realize this, you know, like all the tiny details.
My gosh, man, like I am with you 100% on that. I recently launched my own fashion line as well. Fashion line. I didn't want it to be just merchandise, because same as you, like I wouldn't buy something where it just said like Ben Jaye. Like I don't fuck with that. Like I was like, it's so stupid. It's like a cash grab in my opinion, and also it's not. I love fashion like you do, so like to me, like I'm thinking to myself, would I buy this? Here's the kicker, dude. Here's the kicker. And this goes back to what you talked about before about music and business. Two different games. I put out my fashion line. I'm proud of it. I like it. Not the greatest it could be, but I still kind of like made something that's like unique, you know, and different. Yeah. One of my, and by the way, and I went like you said, I went like the more expensive route, because I put stuff on the sleeves, put stuff on the back, on the front, etc. So obviously the price is like super jacked up, right? So out of most people's price range, I did that because, just to explain for anyone listening who wants, I don't think they care, but I did that because like no one's buying it anyway, so I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose by making, you know, like it's like, okay, I made what I wanted to make, I put it out there. If you like it, cool. If not, nothing changed, you know.
If you like it, you got the option to buy it. Nice.
Precisely. Okay, here's the thing. One of my friends reaches out to me and is like, I wanted to, they literally said, I checked out your store. It's really cool, but it's way too expensive and the designs aren't my style. Could you make this? Sent through my logo slapped on a t-shirt and said, I would love to wear this. And I was like, sure, okay.
Well, that's exactly actually what I was talking about of, you know, do you want to go in that business route or not? Like, you know, you can think to yourself like, okay, if I do the logo slap on the hoodie, it would actually make me money. But that's your choice now to either go ahead with that or not, right?
Right, but so also, and I think also like on a side level, like, because part of it, you know, is about getting the income, but also like recognizing that the audience's taste and the creator's taste is not always the same. You know, like what we listen for in a song, what we look for in fashion is not necessarily what the audience is going to be. Like, no one in the audience is saying, oh man, you missed this decibel when you were doing mixing. Like, no one fucking hears that, you know? But, and so I guess like recognizing that's also important. And then to your point, like having the self-awareness to say like, I want to go this route, I don't want to go this route. For me, again, like back to the fashion, like, you know, no one's buying it anyway, so it doesn't matter if I do it or don't do it to me. Like if someone wants to wear it, I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, buy it. Like if you want to wear that and represent, like, and you think it's cool, then yeah, go for it, you know? Personal choice, personal fashion. I'm all about like, you know, doing what you want to do. But
well, it's a different perspective. Think of it like this, like in anything that you do, you should be selling yourself in a way. So if you follow Paper Skies and you found the Paper Skies merch through me, then there should be a chance that the fashion that you're into is the same fashion as me because you came for me. And if you like me, then there's obviously that chance that you like those things. So for example, like I post a lot of the outfits that I wear and stuff recently on Twitter, and they've been getting a really good reaction. I got tons of people that like slowly at first were like, oh, nice fit, and are now commenting on the more recent posts like, every time you post an outfit, I fucking love it, dude. Your sense of style is great. And that's not to boost my own ego or anything. There's plenty of people who I'm sure don't like the stuff that I wear too. Yeah. But now I know that there's an audience out there that likes the stuff that I like. And there are even people that have followed me because they found me through my outfits and not through my music, right? So now if I was to do merchandise and I were to do the merchandise in the style that I would wear, that I like for myself, I now have an audience that's come to me because of that reason.
Precisely, organic
so
outreach.
Of course they're going to buy the stuff, that kind of stuff. It's not because they'll buy it because it's Paper Skies merch. They'll buy it hopefully with the intent that they like it because I like it, and we both like the same things. That's why you follow me, and that's why I got back to your comment when you said, "Hey, dope outfit," and I'm like, "Thanks, man." You know?
Precisely, dude. Precisely. Like having that organic outreach and doing it authentically, like
there you go.
Authentically, like. And by the way, like it's so cool that this is still happening, because I've had so many conversations. I won't say so many, but I've had a lot of cool conversation with artists, who talked about authenticity and then went on to, reach a lot more success after we had that kind of conversation. Just proves true time and time again. Being authentic is just the way to go. It unlocks so much. Yeah. Dude, what can audiences expect from you this year?
This year I've got a few more things going with Lacuna. I'm aiming now, just even this month, for some higher labels. I've got releases set up until September now. I'm hoping to, at some point in the year, get a remix out, just because I feel like it's been a while since I did a remix, and I love like jumping into new audiences with the artists that I appreciate personally. Yep. But yeah, a lot of new music that defines the style that I want to be rolling with. And for people that are old listeners, especially, that, are maybe more grappled onto my older sound, I think a lot of these new releases are going to find a way to find the balance between the old stuff and the new stuff, and then open the eyes of people who might not, I guess, understand the style of music that I have yet, just because it's been a bit diverse, right?
All right, fantastic. We have a few questions from the audience. I'll shoot at you real quick. First one is from a mutual friend contact. David from Infowler said, generic, but what songs have you been vibing with recently? And tell him I said hi.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, David, what's up? Oh my gosh, I hope you're doing well. I miss you. I've been listening to, and this isn't even just to plug my friends, but quite literally, I've been listening to a stupid amount of Def Sharp's music this week. Def Sharp is a crazy, crazy good melodic bass producer, and kind of like, I don't even want to say melodic bass, because he experiments with so many crazy, jazzy, funky chord progressions in his music, and like insane sound design ideas. Just a really creative person overall. That would be more on the melodic side. Starseed, I've been listening to a lot more. They're a duo between Two Scoops and I don't remember the second producer off the top of my head, but his name is Drew. And they've been producing like some amazingly detailed like pop EDM music. And usually I'm not a huge fan of pop EDM, but the amount of just like texture and attention to like stereo details and things that they put out just makes me fall in love with their music. And then in terms of heavier things, if anybody's interested, the new compilation Final Cataclysm that was released with Rhinolex. So many good tracks on there, from Dyadic, Famous Sphere, Space Yeti, Tracy, a whole bunch of good artists. And yeah, those would be three completely different tastes. And lastly, I guess to mention it just now, since my friend Brian is here, I am huge into like hip hop and like old like 80s instrumental beats and stuff. And I've even been producing a whole ton of them recently. I've been teasing a little bit on social media. I don't know if I'll ever do anything with them, but lots of old vinyls, lots of old players and stuff. I love that type of shit.
Woo, I love that. Next one is from the musician named Just Blue. Shout out to Nathan, Just Blue, who came on the podcast just recently. He said, awesome. How do you feel about young producers? For some context, I'm not sure if you know him, 13-year-old heavy bass EDM producer. Yeah, 13 years old, but he makes some pretty radical stuff. Mostly heavy EDM, tear out, dubstep, dark drum and bass, things of that nature.
The younger you get into it, the better, because at a younger age, you have more time to experiment, you have more time to be creative, and you have more time to think of it as less of like a part of your time management. Like when you're young, you don't even think about the fact that you need to schedule off all your hours, that you need to be working a job, that this school assignment needs to come before all of these different priorities and things, and all this management skills that you need to learn over time. When you're young, you can just do it purely creatively, purely for fun, exactly the music that you want to make, and experiment as much as you can. But as you get older and you notice that you need to start scheduling time to do things, that's the opportunity, I think, to start really jumping into the books. And don't be afraid to start learning a lot more of the technical aspects of music, because in the long run, they're going to do you a huge service.
Fantastic. And last one is from a user named _JTag_. What counts as success for you as far as music and the music industry goes?
I guess I mentioned obviously the idea that for me, the only thing that determines my success is my happiness. But if we want to talk about like goals, I would love to play a show one day. I've still never played a show before. My first one was supposed to be booked. I think it was like March 20th, I believe, or something. And then what do you know? March 15th hits and there's COVID, right? So things shut down with there, but it's always been a huge goal of mine to just play a show and see those live reactions of people listening to my music. Hopefully, good reactions, but I'm open to either options. And I said in that tweet that I made on Twitter too, that even if I do never get to play that show in life, that's not really a definition of success to me. It's something I would love to do. It's a massive goal, but I'm so happy with the point that I've been at. I've been doing music strictly for fun, and God, I never thought I would get to this point. Like, I never thought there would be all these fans and I'd be doing interviews and making music of this degree. It's just been something I love doing, right?
Love it, man. By the way, you are going to definitely play a live show, no fucking doubt. Like,
I hope.
Look back and check this out. There's always a thing I ask the guests to do at the very ending, which is please leave a message to the you of 1 year in the future.
To the you of 1 year in the future, make sure that you're still doing all of this for fun. I've always said to myself since, like, I've said this to my future self 5 years ago, even when I first started, is do it because you love it. Make sure that you're in the right mental state. Make sure that you're happy with what you're doing and that you're not falling into becoming a different person through getting influenced by others. I always get worried that through all the success, if there was to be some huge breakthrough where one day I wake up and I have 100,000 followers, that I'll let myself get pressured into falling into what people are trying to push me towards, the people who I might think know it better than me. But at the end of the day, I know myself. Just stay true to that.
Love it. All right, man. The very last thing to do with a speed round, I'm going to ask a very quick question. You can give a very quick response. Ready to go?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite food?
Spaghetti.
Favorite day of the week?
Tuesday.
Favorite movie?
Avengers.
Favorite song at the moment? Favorite song 1.
Favorite song?
At the moment. At the moment.
Virtual Riot, We're Not Alone. Always been my favorite.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Producing hip hop beats.
What countries do you want to visit?
I want to go to the US and I want to go to LA, but in terms of countries, I want to go anywhere in Asia.
What languages do you speak?
I speak a little bit of Spanish. I can get by English, obviously fluently, and swear words in German.
Name one person, alive or dead, you want to have a conversation with.
Skrillex and or Virtual Riot. They seem like cool people and they inspired me, and I would love to just tell them all the crazy stories of how their music led to me doing stupid or fun or dumb things.
Very last one. How do you want people to think of you?
As someone that they can talk to. I want people to be able to reach out to me. I don't want them to think that I'm some industry con, that if they message me, I'm leaving them on red. I will get back to you.
My gosh, man. Dan, thank you so much for coming on, dude. I think we covered like almost everything we could like fit into this time frame. Is there anything that you wanted to say to the audience in closing, or good to go?
Yeah, just if you guys haven't checked out any of my music at this point, I imagine you probably had if you've managed to sit through the entire interview. Thank you so much for having me on, Ben. But yeah, I've got lots of new things coming. I'm very excited, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Dan, I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been fucking crazy, and I'm sorry to have kept you here for so long. It's just kept snowballing more and more, and I hope it was okay. Everybody who's watching, please, I implore you, go check out Dan. Paper Skies, this dude's a fucking legend. Like, he's been in the game so long. He continues to dominate. He's rising, he's developing, he's improving. Most of all, he's prioritizing the important things: authenticity and happiness, fulfillment, well-being, health. And it's so cool to have someone of his caliber just showing the whole world that those things are important, and you can live the life you want to live in a healthy way. And it's so inspiring to see him doing that so successfully. I wish him all the best. I hope you guys please join his journey as I am following his as well. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
My gosh, man, you are amazing, dude. Thank you for that.
No worries. That was super, super fun.